really pleased we are that he, first of all, wrote to Chris saying he would like to talk to us at some point, and secondly, I invited him to come and talk here. He saw the prospectus and was interested, and I think we're all absolutely delighted that he's joined us here for the last 3 or 4 days. And so, over to you, Hans.
Thank you. Well, as Piena, curator on domestic culture on the Open Air Museum in Holland, the National Open Air Museum. And I would like to start with a few pictures to show you the world I stepped out of when coming here. We are not a static open air museum like old farmhouses, and we are a very dynamic, very large open air museum. And with dynamic, I mean we are not stuck in the past, but everything we do is starts in the present. We look at the current society and what is going on in the current society, and from that we approach history or deal with aspects. And we are founded in 1912. We have then collected material over 100 years. We have 220,000 objects, 230 people working for us, paid, and 450 volunteers. And we have about 82 buildings on our terrain. Recently, we were asked by the government not only to present the more agricultural side of our society, but also the big history. So here you see a part of the presentation with 50 windows on the Dutch history. That's just a part of the presentation. And that was one of the bigger projects in the past few years. The biggest project that we are dealing now with, we are building a new storage facility for our collection, and it's a few football fields big. And we will be there with the collection of the Rijksmuseum, together with the collection of the Rijksmuseum. And for that, the entire collection is photographed. Here's one of our photographers first trying to get this wagon into view in the view of the camera. So everything is photographed in exactly the same way, with exactly the same quality. Every object that has damage is treated, preserved, and all the objects receive protective wrappment or acid-free boxes for the future storage. This is part of our tablecloths and carpets. And while doing so, we made a few discoveries, and that I wrote them down here. We found back objects we thought we had lost. We found objects we did not know we had. Objects we always thought we had and couldn't find anymore. And objects we thought we had these sessions long ago were discovered to be still in our storage facility. And everything in between. But apart from that, we found 225 leatherback chairs. And they looked quite the same to us. Many of them looked quite the same. William brought a nice chair. And the backside is Dutch, in my opinion. And these knobs and the styles, the back legs, the little bun feet, and the top rail like this, is typically Dutch. The rest, to my opinion, is not, but we will discuss this later. Then, at least if I turn it around this way, you have the first impression of a Dutch leatherback chair. And so we found 225 of these chairs. Nobody had ever had a serious look at them. And we asked ourselves, so do we need 225 chairs that look rather similar? Can we date them? Are there any dateable features on these chairs? Is there something like regional differences? So we started the watch project. We studied the wood species. We studied the construction, the tool traces, the stains and the paint layers, the models, and the wear and tear on these chairs. I can't go into all of these details. What I will tell today is the history of the leatherback chair in Holland. And for that, we not only studied a lot of leatherback chairs, but we also studied about 5,000 paintings and engravings on which leatherback chairs can be found. First of all, I'd like to show you some of the ancestors of the Dutch leatherback chair. The three most common ancestors of the Dutch leatherback chairs you see here. It's a chair with legs of quite a thick diameter, like the three-legged chair that we saw today in and a lot of times the sides are closed. You see, this is one. So here you already see the turn front leg, turn back legs, and the decorative turning that you will see later. Another chair. Oh, sorry. What is this? Yeah, sorry, it's all right. This is on the left. You will see a chair like that was excavated north of Rotterdam, and it is in the 13th century. And the reconstruction you see on the right, it's ash, and this is our only medieval ancestor of the leatherback chair that still survived. And the other type is a little chair that you will see there in the middle, and it's made of split wood, riveted wood, riven wood, with already a rush sheet, and we have one in the collection. All the other chairs I'm going to show you today are from our collection. Only the excavated chair is not in our collection. So this is a chair like that, with riven from riven wood, with a rush sheet. The seat is of course not original, and this is a bit later, comparable. The third and last ancestor of the Dutch leatherback chair is the three-legged chair, and there is no copy, no three-legged chair has survived in Holland. This is a reproduction of a later model. So these are the three chairs. And going through these 5,000 pictures, I came across 8 chairs that are contemporary to the Dutch leatherback chair, and I've made drawings of them in the Golden Age. So we talk about 1560 till 1660. In the Golden Age, there were 8 chairs contemporary to each other. They were used at the same time. Still, the three-legged chair on top left was used extensively, although it already occurs in medieval times. It was still in use. And then you have the extended version with the higher back that was in use during the Golden Age. The simple type of the three-legged chair that we saw today, and the more decorated version, which you can often see on paintings by Jan Steen. The other 4 you can see here. are often made with a strip of bent wood as a back support. And the top left is the drawing from an existing chair. It's 17th century, to my knowledge. And the last chair is already remarkably similar to the leatherback chairs we know today, except that the armrests are stretchers and not really armrests like is underneath here. And there are paintings with chairs like that. This is a children's chair, and it has armrests as stretchers as armrests. We have one in the collection over there, although that's a later chair. This is a painting from early 17th century. I think this is a chair from 1870, 1880 actually. One of the earliest drawings that portray a leatherback chair as we know today is this drawing. A rich lady making lace work, and the other engraving is a very rich family around the dining table. The two children have to stand. They are not allowed to sit. It's also a common Dutch practice to show their parents respect. Yeah. And there you see the leatherback chair as it will continue to be used throughout the 17th century with decorative turning on the back styles and with elaborate finials on top. And we have one chair like that in the collection. It's a doll's chair, and I don't think it's early, but I do think it's 17th century. And I even think that the mat, you see here, is the webbing or the mat, how you call it? It's original. Yeah. Because we researched the paint on this chair, and the oldest layer of paint is overlapping the rushes at the corners. Here and here you can see black paint, and the same black paint is the first layer on these chairs. But no adult copies have survived. I don't know how you call this, but only only dolls or children's chairs have survived from this age. So the leatherback chair is slowly gaining terrain, is slowly becoming more fashionable in cities among rich people. You see an example here. You can tell from the furniture that they are quite wealthy, inlay with ebony, and we call it a daffodil chair, which are quite expensive chairs. Not only can we find evidence for the use of the leatherback chair during the 17th century, but we can also find evidence that they were actually made in large cities. These are two gilt coins, or gilt medals, you call them. And these are the gilt medals from the city of Rotterdam, mid-17th century, the St. Joseph Guild. And among the members of the St. Joseph Guild there were quite a few chair turners. And here you see the leatherback chair with stretchers. Not only paintings, not only gilt medals, but also archival evidence we found. This is a chair maker from Amsterdam, 1655, and he is summing up his inventory, and in the front of his house and in the backyard, it says op de plaats on top. He, and I translate it for you. He has 1,000 pieces of ash wood, many chairs. He also makes axe handles, and he has 2 lathes. So this man in the city of Amsterdam, 1650, is making a lot of turned, simple wooden chairs. Now I'm coming to the phenomenon of green chairs. William found, or your friend found, a source of Boston. Maybe you can tell 1 or 2 lines about the Boston book, Harbor.
You know that I do a lot of research into Lincolnshire rush-seated chairs, and recently we came across the Boston Port Records book, which has the taxes paid on import through Boston, and Boston was a huge port in those days, and this book goes from about 1600 to 1640, and there are so many references to importation of Dutch green chairs, and it gives the tax on them as well, and from the tax you can work out the value of each chair, and each chair we worked out was 6.5p each. But they were coming into Boston by the hundreds, and they were called Dutch green chairs.
Now the Dutch green chair already existed in medieval times, because you can see them on paintings. The 3-legged chair was already painted green. You can see them on paintings of Breugel, for instance. And here you see one of the many examples of a 17th century leatherback chair. Again, the turning, halfway the style, the decorative turning, and the elaborate finials on top. And there were in every city there were, I use the Dutch expression, stoelgroeners. Literally translated, it means chair greeners, and those were often painters that painted the chairs green, and they were used all over Holland, and your source shows that they were also exported to England. Yeah. But it's a very common phenomenon. The other color often used is reddish, and now and then you find we have one example. The scraping on the side is not my work. We have one example in our collection, and the first layer on this chair is greenish, but it's not an opaque layer of paint. It's rather transparent. It's very resonance. Yeah, it's got a lot of resonance. So it's more like a luster than it's a paint. It's the only one we have, a really early green chair. Now there were other decorations, but they are quite rare. Here you see a painting by a female painter, Judith Leijster. It's in Stockholm, Sweden. And you see the damage here. I haven't noticed it yet. And you see a little decorative stamping on in the back style. And there are other examples where they have marbled style with the chair. But apart from that, chairs were green or they were waxed transparently and nothing else. Now, if we leave the 17th century, we have a look in the 18th century, then we will find that in the cities the leatherback chair has become a very common chair used by a much poorer and wider, larger audience. And you can see that here. We are in the month of May, a month in Holland where people are allowed to change from employer. So they could stop with one employer and go to the next employer. And here on the front you see a family moving from one master's household to the other, and they have leatherback chairs on top of their belongings. And in the back you see their employer leaving, I think, the house to go to their manor house on the countryside, because the aristocracy in Amsterdam used to leave Amsterdam in spring because the canals were starting to stink tremendously, because the feces were just dumped in all these canals. So they fled during the summer, and you don't see any leatherback chairs with them. You see cabriole, French-inspired chairs. You see a tea table. So among the rich, the leatherback chair was getting out of fashion during the 18th century and was widely used among poor people. That's also illustrated here. Pancake baker, earning her money with baking pancakes. People come in with money to buy some pancakes, and you see her sitting on a leatherback chair with very comparable hands as the chair you see here. And a tea table. Next talk I will do on tea tables, Jeremy. Because I already found tea tables in medieval times.
Oh.
Yeah, they wouldn't have drunk tea on these tables. But this tablestone shows us that the leatherback chair was a very normal phenomena. It says nooit volmaakt. It means never perfect. Never perfect. The gable stone wants to tell us we had this, and now we have these gilded rich furniture, and still we're not satisfied. So they have left behind the leatherback already. What the leatherback is gaining more terrain on the countryside. Here we see a farmer's interior, the big kitchen, and we see two things. We still see the three-legged chair. The lady of the house is sitting on a three-legged chair, and we are in 1760, still in use, but the decorative shape, the decorative form, so the 17th century form. And her child is tied to a children's chair. It was a very common way to raise children in Hull, just tie them to that chair. Couldn't go anywhere. And if you look closely to this chair, then it has a hollow top rail. And I found quite some chairs that have hollow top rails. And I don't know why. Maybe you can tell me. But usually, of course, if you grab a chair, this part might snap off, but it snaps off straight with the grain. It doesn't snap off with the curve. And we found quite some chairs, and you also see this on this painting with a curved top rail. I don't know why. Anyway, this is an example. Well, that's not the best example, but this is an example of such a chair. So we are, during the 19th century, you see that the leatherback chair is still in use. Among the poorer people, this is a fisher village on the Isle of Marken, and they use a lot of mahogany stained, usually elmwood leatherback chairs. Comparable to a chair like that. You see, the reason why I think this half is English and this half is Dutch is in Holland, or in normal paintings, I've ever seen a chair with these decorative structures and this baluster-like turning on this side. So I don't know, I've seen this chair only yesterday, but it made me think about the Boston books that you found, and that maybe the Dutch at some time have made leatherback chairs for the English market, and that this is a chair made in Holland, but with a more or less English feel to it. We extensively studied the wear and tear on these chairs, and you will always find that in front, especially when you have a lower stretcher here, it is worn out by the feet that people put up. But sometimes we find chairs that show the same kind of wear on the back stretchers. You're looking at the back of a chair now, the back side of the chair, and the back stretchers are hollowed out. You can see there especially. And it kept me wondering for quite a while how on earth you are able to put your feet on these back stretchers. What would you have to do? But then it correlates with top rails that have a number on them. So it must have been chairs from public places. And then I found this picture in a church, people sitting in rows, and they would put their feet on the stretcher of the chair in front of them, so wearing out the back stretchers instead of the front stretchers that you will find in a household. The other kind of operation that kept me puzzled for quite a while is this type. You see that the back of the chair of the back legs is abraded all along the length, and even the rails are sanded almost. I couldn't figure out what that could be till I found this picture of children. Evidently, their parents are away from home. And this is what children do with your furniture when you're not there. Anyway, around 1900, the leatherback chair was only used in a few pockets in Holland. And here you see a beautiful example of a farmer's family with the maidens and the knechten, we call it. I don't know what the English name is. Processing linen in all the phases. And then, at the moment that the Dutch leatherback chair was only used in a few pockets, it was discovered by designers. And they interpreted the fact that it was only used at their time, during their life, in those pockets, and they interpreted it as being regional. They thought, this chair is regional. And they thought it was a real farmer chair, and it reflected the noble simplicity of the farmer's life, farmer's spirit. And they started to promote this type of chair and enhance it, even simplify it a little more to have it look like more farm-like, more. And here you see examples. So top-notch designers creating top-notch leatherback chairs for the richer people, and much more simple. We have a few of those in the collection. But what really happens here is that the designers interpreted these pockets as being the leatherback chair is regional, while actually it was a countrywide phenomenon, and they interpret it as being typically for the noble farmer, whereas originally the leatherback chair comes from the elite, the city elite, around 1600 in Holland. And if you would ask the farmers at that time what they would have liked, they would have associated this type of chair with poverty, not with design or anything desirable. The type of leatherback chair that they would have fancied is this one. Ornate, lots of decoration, and this is what the farmers really bought around 1920, 1930. Yeah. To finish it all, I'm going to show a film. Our museum has, put on my glasses. In 1964, our museum has made a documentary on the last leatherback chair maker in Holland. By then he wasn't producing any leatherback chairs anymore, but he shows us for the last time how he did it during, just before and just after the First World War. Yeah. And he's using the tools of his father. Let's see if we can get it working here. It's in Dutch, but you will understand most of it.
Hendrik verricht wat gardeetjes op het erf bij het huis. Vroeger klonken van de pas zelf het hout voor de stoelpoten, sporten en scheien uit de essenstoom.
This is the wood for the stretchers.